Today is a day, great day for us to hear desperate dispatches from Abuja, Nigeria, where the leader of IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, is being arraigned in court for a hearing for a trial, and where Buhari regime has added another charge of terrorism. Remember the Nigerian situation, and Buhari's background is the chief rendating officer in the whole world. Remember, Buhari rendated 6 Amazonians from Nigeria back to Port Biya to kill them. They were killed. We don't know where they are. Nobody has ever known where they are. Remember, Buhari tried to rendate Umar Diko from a British installation, surely, in Stansted Airport, where Umar Diko was found in a coffin, purported to be a dead body, discovered by MI5 and the Metropolitan Police. That was General Buhari. General Buhari has not changed his colors. General Buhari remains the same Buhari. General Buhari operates outside every norm of law on the planet Earth. It is up to the people of Africa. And at this time, we don't talk as Nigerians, we talk as Africans. When something happens to any African, anywhere on planet Earth, we stand with that African. When something wrong goes wrong on the continent of Africa, we stand by that country and condemn actions of killings, torture, maiming, corruption. We have never been away. We are not part of rogue regime change. We are not part of regimes that are rogue regimes. We are different from our operations. Our operations as a Pan-African speaking station does not involve itself in operations that are clandestine. Our operations are above board. If you can hear me, most of the night, people in Nigeria and in Biafra, you hear me almost every Monday in the village square on your television. Millions, over 60 to 70 millions of you hear me every day. And I condemn actions in Africa across without any remorse. I have no regrets for standing for the people of Africa, the oppressed, those who yearn freedom, those who want freedom. You cannot talk of African unity when some parts of Africa are injured, are bleeding. You cannot talk about a country called Nigeria with a population of 200 million people, which could be serving Africa as an example when it is sinking in Atlantic Ocean. The rate of poverty in Nigeria today, a country over 60 years without electricity, a country where people sleep over water. A BBC documentary recently showed that people sleep on water. A country that has no value for Africa at all. We thought a big population, people in Kenya and Uganda and East Africa would sell their commodity. We have ended up ashamed. We have been ashamed by the leadership of General Buhari. And we have no regrets of telling the world that indeed General Buhari has mishandled the economy of that country, has mishandled the security of that country, has mishandled, killed the value of a presidency. We have no regrets. We have no regrets of telling the world that Boko Haram kills people, maims people, that Nigeria has become a state of kidnappers, a state where people, vigilante groups, bandits, commonly known, come and take people on ransom and hide them, demand money. We have not been shy, and neither shall we be shy and be intimidated. Mr. Buhari, you shall be told the truth, because some of us you beat us by very few years, but we have also been in the same army that you have trained in those institutions of Sandhurst and other places. Mr. Buhari, time has come for you to change Africa. But if you want to change Africa by killing people, it doesn't help you. If you want to change Africa for ignoring Boko Haram, did you form Boko Haram, Mr. Buhari? Are you the owner?
This 27th day of January 2022. This is Punchline Africa TV, and the show tonight is the Facing the Political Fire, coming to you live from our studios in Nairobi, Kenya. And tonight we're going to be discussing the issue of elections in Africa and the kind of divisions, the kind of chaos and crisis that it has caused across the continent. Joining me tonight on the show, it will be Dr. Daniel Juma and Dr. David Matsanga, and we have Professor David Hoyle, who is joining us from London, the UK. I'll start by just introducing the guests in the show, and I'll start with Dr. Matsanga David, who will go ahead to introduce the other guests who are joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, viewers across the continent of Africa, wherever you are watching us. This is Punchline Africa Television. I am the chief guest of this show tonight. I'm Dr. David Matsanga, Pan-African Forum Chairman, and we are joined by Dr. Juma of Peace. I call him Mr. Peace on my phone, a man who reconciles, a man who talks about Africa, a man who is bothered about what happens, what goes wrong. The question here is, why are elections in Africa very contentious? Why do they create chaos? Every year in Africa is chaos. So Dr. Daniel Juma will tell us more, and I will also argue with him and maybe ask people, what is the election? What is an election in Africa? How many Africans understand elections? For him, having come from the side of the NGO and the civil society for a long time, he might be able to give me a glimpse of what it is to have an election. In Nigeria, for example, the state is collapsing. We had an election, but the president doesn't even know the left, the right, the legs, the tail, the head. The country is being swallowed by bandits, terrorists, kidnappers, call them rapists, corruption, those extorting money. Jesus Christ. That is, welcome to the show, Dr. Daniel Juma. Of your microphone is there for you to tell us more what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Punchline Africa TV. Thank you, my friend, Dr. Matsanga, Wesonga, and all those who are joining us here today. As you heard, my name is Daniel Juma of Mondi. I am the Executive Director of the Global Peace Foundation in Kenya. We are a US-based nonprofit, and I manage the Kenyan office. We have 4 offices in Africa, including Nigeria, Uganda, and Tanzania. So the topic of elections is one that is very, very dear to the work that I do. As you know, at the Global Peace Foundation, we believe that peace is not just the absence of war, that peace is mainly structural. People fight for various reasons, but in Africa, one of the main sources of conflicts, of course, as you know, is resource allocations. And politics is central to the issue of resource allocation. As you know, politics is the allocation of resources and values. So we, as a people, entrust politicians with the power to allocate on our behalf resources and values. Most of these are natural resources. And of course, values are, of course, things like justice and all those that you cannot touch with your hand, but that are very, very important. And elections remain central to the development of democratic and inclusive societies in Africa. Not only do elections provide means to economic growth and developments, since citizens can elect leaders based on their campaign promises and policies on socio-economic, and regular elections also contribute to peace building by conferring authority on leaders and facilitating peaceful transfer of power and promoting citizens' participation and inclusion in governance. And I discussed earlier on with, when you called me to tell me about this topic today, and as I told you, I have been able to give a paper earlier on in early 2020 in a UN conference, UN IGAD conference, and I was actually talking about the issue of transformation in Africa. And in that paper, I actually, spoke about elections and Africa as something a tool that was given to us by the colonialists. It's a colonial legacy. When the colonialists came, we inherited elections as a means of electing our leaders. But as you know, even before colonization of Africa, we had our own ways of choosing our leaders. But, just as we have adopted several things, from the colonialists, including the language that we speak, so we gave ourselves elections as a means of electing our leaders and conferring legitimacy on our leaders. But unfortunately, as we have seen, elections have remained a source of conflict, a trigger of conflict in Africa. You have seen, as it happened in Kenya in 2007, it happened in Togo, it happened in Zimbabwe, it has happened in several African countries. People have suffered just because they lined up to choose their leaders. People died, especially in Kenya in 2007, 2008. People died in almost 1,000. Hundreds of thousands were displaced just because, they lined up to elect their leaders. And most of these, of course, is connected, to ethnicization of elections, and especially Africa, where political power, is so emotive. Political power is so emotive. And if you look at Kenya, a situation whereby, we have the system of winner take all, where when a leader is elected, he doesn't see himself as a leader of the whole country, including those who did not vote for him. But when a leader, usually when they're elected, then they most likely see themselves as leaders of their community, leaders of their political party. And if you can see in Kenya, for example, for a long time, those countries, those areas, those tribes that did not produce presidents, were mainly marginalized, apart from the urban areas. And this has made elections very, very competitive, very, very competitive, kind of a cutthroat kind of phenomenon. And as you can see already, even right now, as we are going towards the 2022 elections, already there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of tension in the country. We have seen, panic, especially in the business community. Investors do not want to come, into the countries during elections because they know that there will be disruption of business, disruption of life as we know it, and loss of lives, and this is one of the reasons that we have seen Kenyans going into panic mode, when we approach elections. And this made me think, and in my paper, I spoke about why do we need to go through elections? Why do we need to take something that that is dangerous, that is actually a cause of conflicts, that's a cause of death? So I posited in my paper that why not, for example, just go back to how we used to elect our leaders. Of course, I don't know how they used to do it, but one of the things that that I suggested in my paper was that why not ask those who are interested in becoming presidents or becoming members of parliament, to send their CVs, and we have a panel, who will conduct the interviews. And then the person who is most qualified, becomes president, becomes prime minister, or becomes members of parliament as senators. So as Africa, I think we need to innovate, new ideas. If, for example, we feel that universal suffrage, democracy as we know it is not working for us, we need to rethink. Sometimes we may have to rethink. And this, of course, brings in various examples. Look at Libya, for example. Under Gaddafi, for a long time we did not have elections in Libya under Gaddafi, and Libya was fairly stable, very, very stable. The people were having good life. They said actually, almost having free oil, and every person had the money in their pockets. But when when we introduced elections, democracy in Libya, Libya has never been the same again. So it has never known peace since. Another example, if you look at Rwanda, of course, Rwanda is a democracy. But of course, as you know, President Kagame has been president for a long time, and he will still be there for quite a long time. But even without giving specific examples, you have had talks about benevolent dictatorship, and some other countries, of course, prefer, benevolent dictatorship because, they believe that, sometimes because of the indiscipline of the people, sometimes we may need somebody who will come in, with a big rungu and ensure that people are obeying the laws, people are following the scripts. And some of the countries that have witnessed benevolent dictatorship, have realized a fair form of stability and economic development. So this is something that going forward, I think as scholars, leaders like you, Dr. Matsanga, scholars, we may need to rethink if election is not working, for us, because the Western people, they brought it and they left us, and now we are fighting each other. And as you know, even during colonization, we had the phenomenon of divide and rule, and we inherited the issue of the divide and rule, and we have had leaders who do not want, to leave power. You have seen how the issue of term limits has become controversial. We have leaders who do not want to obey term limits. They change the constitutions at will so that they can remain in power as long as they want. And this again, makes a mockery of elections as we know it. So moving forward, I think we may need to rethink, Africa needs to rethink, how do we ensure that elections work for us instead of working against us? The Constitution, of course, says that every 5 years, the Kenyan Constitution says every 5 years, we must subject ourselves to an election. The framers of that part of the Constitution did not envisage that this requirement would lead to death and destruction. If they knew that this would be the result, then they would not have prescribed the necessity of having elections. So Dr. Matsanga and all the speakers here, so that's my opening statement. Let me hear your views on this as we discuss this very, very emotive subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, let the host take me through first.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Juma. And of course, you've raised very, very pertinent issues in a very, very robust submission. And some of the issues that have come out is that the cause of chaos in election is all about centered rather around sharing of resources, the issue of marginalization, and you've gone ahead to mention also that these elections have not been benefiting the African continent or the African people, so to say. And you've given an example of countries which primarily have been stable without having these elections, as we call them. But also, when you look at the West African part of our continent, we've been having these coup d'etats and political instability based on whatever issues you've talked about resources, you've talked about marginalization. Now, going to Dr. Matsanga David, the director has proposed that perhaps it is time to do what you always refer to a fatigue evaluation. It's time for Africa to go back to the drawing board and be able to evaluate this animal we call democracy, which of course was handed down unto us by the former colonial masters. What is your thought about whatever issues that Dr. Daniel Juma has raised in terms of democracy? Does Africa really need democracy?
Thank you very much, Daniel, Dr. Daniel Juma, and then Daniel Sean Wesonga. First, I want to make it very clear, countries like Nigeria. Let me take a case study of Nigeria, for example. For 60 years, this country has undergone several undercurrents of regime change, military coups, civilian regime change again, military coups. Since 1966, Nigeria plunged into a civil war, creation of a state of Biafra versus General Yakubu Gowon and Ojukwu. The situation grew up beyond the African Organization of African Unity because Biafrans wanted to go away. Why did they want to go away? Because they were fed up with what we call one-sided elections. Elections have been the cause of instability. If you look across the whole continent of Africa today, in all parts of the countries that I can mention, Kenya, Libya, Rwanda, Ghana, not Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Somalia. How many MPs from Tanzania fled to Kenya during the elections of Magufuli? What is the problem in Somalia? It is still elections. When you look at the problem in Somalia, it's still elections. If you look at the problem of Tanzanian opposition, it's still elections. If you look at the problem of South Sudan, it's still elections. Because Riek Machar wanted to change the constitution. And Salva Kiir said, no, we are not changing. He wanted to modify, reform, create perestroika for the sense of creating. There were glass notes. Mr. Salva said you will not take them. You want to bring perestroika in SPLA and SPLO. Bloodshed went down. South Sudan is no more. Khartoum, Sudan, the same. Let's go to the most recent one, Ethiopia. Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed came in with sweeping reforms. And the sweeping reforms were directed towards making Ethiopia agreed with his demands of having a state which is ruled by none other than other tribes called the Tigray. The Tigray should not be there. They should go home. There was a phrase, go home. Which is home? Where is home? Where is home in Ethiopia? If you are an Ethiopian, you are in Addis Ababa, and somebody tells you to go home. Which home do you go? If you are Biafran, and because of elections, somebody tells you to go back home because you are in Abuja, which home is your home? You have seen those elections across in Egypt. You have seen elections in West African states. 3 West African states have taken their presidents that were purportedly elected on gunpoint. Mali, Keita died an overthrown president. Guinea, Conakry, Conde is in exile somewhere in Libya, in Saudi Arabia. He might be brought back a coffin. God forbid. A few days ago, Burkina Faso, they took their president and locked him inside. We don't know whether he's still alive. Elections. Democratic Republic of Congo. We hear there are so many factions. The Prime Minister has resigned, another one has left to keep the Senate. Elections. Kabila is making another return, an attempt to return to power. Elections. Let's go on. Zimbabwe. Since 2019, 2017, 2018, when we conducted an election, and Mnangagwa won, the Supreme Court of Zimbabwe said Mnangagwa has won. Chamisa has changed from a butterfly to a bat. As we see today, he's trying to fly with yellow colors. I will explain to you why yellow colors are being taken now seriously. It's because it is George Soros' symbol. Yellow revolution, orange revolution, blue revolution. He names them according to how he likes. Ruto revolution in Kenya, Musalia Mudavadi revolution. Look at the colors they use. They are given a condition. You must put yellow. The people who don't know must know this. So when you look across Africa, in Zimbabwe, for example, Mr. Chamisa has been singing of elections until another election is coming next year. In Kenya, for example, Mr. Ruto, immediately the elections were over and the handshake took place. He has been on the campaigning trail until today. Does Ruto understand what an election is? Any of you on the panel who knows what is an election? To an African, I don't know. Me, I don't know whether an African knows what an election is. Because an election is something that you go in once you are not happy, or even if you are happy or not happy, you accept the results of the referee and go home.
Yeah.
How many African leaders write 2 notes? The conceding note and the winning note. I don't think President Uhuru Kenyatta wrote. This only President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2000 who wrote 2 notes.
Yes.
But I don't think in 2017 he wrote 2 notes. I am sorry, my president, I am just saying it. You are my friend. But there are no African leaders who write 2 notes. Mr. Besigye has been contesting against Museveni 6 times. And Mr. Museveni has been there since 1986. Yesterday he celebrated year number 36 as a leader of Uganda. Has he ever written a conceding speech? No. There you are. There we go. There we go. Elections in Africa, nobody concedes. Is this the way we can govern our Africa? Look at the elections in Kenya. Who has been causing more chaos in Kenya? Not Raila. Why K92? It was Ruto, where many people, Kikuyus, were murdered in the Rift Valley. And we have got to speak about these things frankly. Because the same Ruto is masquerading to be uniting people. But he was a youth wing of YK92, breaking people's necks, killing them. When Jirongo narrated the story of how the neck of a younger man was broken in his presence, nobody has ever bothered. I don't know whether Dr. Daniel Juma will tell me why Kenyans love thieves. That if you go and say you hate Ruto in a club where Ruto supporters are, they will lick you. But they love the thief than you, who is talking about corruption in Kenya. So, all in all, does Africa understand elections? Every part of Africa where there is an election, there is apprehension. Everywhere. Britain is going to conduct an election in May for the council, local councils. But there is no apprehension. People will just go and vote and wait to go back to work and wait who. They even ask who won. But is there a country in Africa, apart from South Africa, where South Africans hear the results of the winner? The winner, while they are in their offices working. In Kenya, we hear the results while we are breaking the windows and doors. We are breaking the windows and the doors. Let's be very honest. And breaking the lights, shops, looting, killing people, burning tires. That's the norm of Kenyan elections. As I finish today, as you look at what is happening to this country, to me, I want to put it to you people and those listening across the world, that if I were the president of the Republic of Kenya, I would not hold an election at all. I want Juma to tell me whether there is need to hold an election in Kenya today. If I were President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, I would go back to Parliament and seek ample time, be allowed, extend, do a redemption strategy. You're a peacemaker yourself. Kenya has no redemption strategy. If you see the type of language that was used by Mudavadi against the president, and Mudavadi has got children. The daughter of Mudavadi was at the platform watching dad using such a language on Raila Odinga. Yesterday, Mudavadi's family were watching. The wife was dressed in Indian cuisine, you know, attire, not cuisine, sorry. Very well placed. That's an Africa we want. But she was listening to the husband throwing out venom against President Uhuru Kenyatta. All this is because of an election. Mudavadi has been eating more. He eats like I don't know, I don't want to describe. You have never found him with food, especially with chicken. He eats real big. He's not a man who eats little food. Matanga, I've grown this body not because I eat food. I am a very poor eater. But the body just likes me. But Mudavadi eats, drinks heavily. Even at times, he's carried to the car. But nobody has criticized his habits. We thought he was worth it. All this has come because of an election. Therefore, does Africa need elections? Therefore, does Africa know what elections are? Therefore, does Kenya hold elections? Given that Mr. Wafula Chebukati is still telling us that today he's registering people, and by 6th, he will only get less than 500,000 people. Are people interested in elections in Africa? Why should an African country waste 52 billion shillings to collect stones and to make people collect stones to come and beat us? Isn't it the time for the debate as to whether from the books of Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, name them, the Plato Republic, I've read them on this planet Earth. Go and read them. The books of Nikolai Machiavelli. Is there anything that tells you you hold elections every 5 years? If there is one, Dr. Daniel Juma, bring it for me. I'll be very happy. One section that said, I want you to hold elections every 5 years. That Socrates told you that you must hold elections every 5 years. We Africans have taken a model of the British and we have run with it, not knowing that Britain is 1,800 years of democracy since the first ballot started taking place. Now, we are only 59 years old. Kenya is about 58. Uganda will celebrate 60 years. Look at the country called Uganda. Mr. Bob Wine is busy inaugurating books in South Africa, wearing very nice suits. But when he leaves that South Africa with Obasanjo, who is his surrogate, he returns to tell us, we want to come and demonstrate. It's because of elections. And luckily enough, Ugandans are very, very emotive. They have food after Museveni has defeated them, whether wrongly or rightly, but most of the time is wrongly. They don't come to the streets. But does it, why should a leader waste 62 billion shillings of Kenya? That is $6.2 billion to hold an election only to end up beat up the people who voted. Does Africa need elections? I submit, therefore, and Mr. Moderator, the host, that Africa at the moment needs to change. In my second part, I will submit how China 40 years ago was very poor, having one rice scheme in Kampala, in Uganda, in Kibimba, sharing with millions of Chinese. But today, China, we used to share that rice. I hope China also remembers that they use our rice to grow. They are meant to grow higher than the height they have. And they one day give us some roads, some airport for free. But 35 years to 40 years ago, they went back and thought, I want to leave a question. Does China hold elections? Is there anybody in Africa? Again, I challenge Dr. Daniel to show me one MP from China. Name him the name, I'll give you 1 million shillings. Tomorrow. But China lends the money to America at night. And America doesn't want Africa to be lent the money during the daytime. Where are we heading? This is the Africa that we want. Coups are coming. Military coups are coming. I'm giving a lot for you, Daniel, in plenty, so that you can see the entire picture of Africa. Coups. Who is instigating the coups? One factor is elections. Badly managed elections can create a very big military coup. And Kenya should learn from this. The Kenyans should learn from this. If you look at the people who are trying to come out of the barracks, they are not the seasoned generals. The trend in West Africa shows some man in the barracks just sits down and comes for you. Because of your money, people are crying, they have no food. Another factor that I would like Daniel to touch finally, so that I keep quiet and listen to, is the question of George Soros. External forces, darker forces that come to Africa, inject money. The deal between Musalia Mudavadi, Dr. Juma, the deal between Musalia Mudavadi and Ruto was sponsored by George Soros. The yellow ribbon is here in Kenya. Can you say it is not there? Back to you. I hand it back to the host.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga David. Of course, that has been a very, very powerful and insightful contribution to this particular topic. And for our viewers who are just joining us, today we are looking at elections in Africa. And we are asking the questions, are elections in Africa a trigger to instability in this particular continent? Now, I'll just maybe pick a few things that you've been able to bring out, and that is electoral mismanagement in African country. You've used a case scenario of Nigeria, you've used a case scenario of here at home, you've used a case scenario in Uganda, and I believe there are so many other countries, including Cameroon, and also many other West African countries. Today, Somalia is in a state of discord, simply because in 1991, something wasn't done right in regards to elections. Today, Libya is in chaos simply because of the same factors. Today, Ethiopia is actually in a crisis simply because of elections. Now, going back to Dr. Daniel Juma, Dr. Matsanga David, in his parting shot, he has said that Africa needs to change. Africa needs to go back to the drawing board. In your own view, what would be this kind of leadership structure, or maybe electoral structure, apart from the universal suffrage and democracy, that Africa could be able to employ to make sure that we do not have chaotic scenarios whenever we go to elections? He has gone further to maybe give us an example of China, which is actually economy is growing at this particular moment, but you realize they do not hold elections. And on your side, you gave us an example of Rwanda, which is a country which is a democracy, and I would say not a democracy, because what we have there is a benevolent dictatorship, to be bold. So what would be this ideal leadership structure that could actually help Africa move away from this perennial problem of elections causing chaos each electoral cycle?
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, David, for that powerful presentation. Of course, you have given the example of China, and the Chinese believe in themselves. They have their systems of governance. They believe in that system of governance, and it is working for them. Of course, I know that the West has been trying their level best to import that system of the democracy, the democratic system of governance to China, but China is not interested in that. But also, if you look at Britain, Britain is actually a monarchy. You know, and in the monarchy, they don't hold elections, and that is where the power is. Of course, whenever a prime minister is elected, they have to go to the Queen to hand over, to request the Queen to form power. And yeah, so it is true that in Africa may need to rethink. You know, we may rethink if we decide to accommodate, you know, to accommodate elections as a way of managing our governance, then we must find a way of doing it in a proper manner, doing it in a sustainable manner, in a manner that does not securitize, that does not cause insecurity in Africa. So, and as you have said in your speeches, and I said earlier, election is one of the biggest security threats. It's one of the issues that it's securitized every time there is an election, and especially in Kenya, you know, the security is on high alert. And the problem is that we don't do it well. We don't manage our elections well. For example, look at Kenya, where we have our electoral management laws. Our laws are very clear on how we need to conduct ourselves during elections. Our laws are very clear, for example, that there should be no early campaigns. But look at our current politicians. The election was held in 2017. Immediately, as you rightfully observed, David, the deputy president embarked on campaigns immediately after that election. So that also defeats the purpose of elections because, and you asked rightfully, do Africans understand the reason for elections? Do we really understand why we go for elections? I posit here that we do not understand. But I keep on telling people whenever I do civic education that election is like a sieve. If you have that sieve, kichungu, when you're making tea, it's a sieve that, because so many people present themselves for elections, and you need to elect just a few. So it's a process that helps you to sieve and end up with the best in terms of course, manifesto, in terms of their campaign strategy, and whoever is elected as president, whoever is elected as legislature or senators or whatever becomes in charge. They become president of everybody. You do not look at yourself as the president of your tribe or the people that voted for you. But unfortunately, in Kenya and also in this has been the tradition, this has been the perception that if you are elected, then your people, your tribes will benefit. They will benefit from roads, resources, appointments. And as you rightfully observed, most of the people, when they're elected, they appoint people from their tribes. And I must also take this opportunity to congratulate our president. And when the president came up with the Building Bridges initiative, he had understood that this winner-take-all system is not working for us. And he has been saying in his speeches that we need to relook at our system. Is this working for us? But look at the president, when he did his cabinet, he tried to choose his cabinet from various tribes, but of course his deputy, and everyone has been talking about it. Most of the people he chose, to his cabinet were mainly from his tribe. So this mentality that our politicians have, that when I've been elected, I am there for my tribe. This is one of the biggest causes of problems, and it makes our elections look nonsensical. And the sooner we deal with that, the better. And also our electoral management body, they rarely observe their own rules. For example, when I took part in parliamentary elections in 2019, I was running for member of parliament for Guinea. There are laws that are clear. Of course, early campaign is, very clear. You're not supposed to engage. Then there's voter bribery. Then there's an issue of the campaign time, when campaign starts and it ends. But here I was trying my best to observe campaign timings and even observe, voter bribery, as in trying not to, blatantly bribe voters. But my opponents were doing it. They were distributing money every now and then with abandon. And the security could see, the policemen were there, they can see, but they're doing nothing. The electoral management body itself can investigate if they want. They can actually send their spies and they will see that so-and-so is actually distributing money, is bribing voters, so-and-so is engaged in early campaign. Like whatever is going on, early campaign, that the deputy president started early. In some areas, even in Uganda, there are people who started campaign as early as when COVID came. So they are campaigning, and as we are busy doing our work, because we understand that when you are elected to serve the people. You are elected to work. So after you have been elected, you give yourself time to deliver the services for which you are elected. You get my point? So you do not start campaigning again, for a job that you have been given to do. And that's one of the reasons that I've also disagreed with the deputy president. And I've said it many times in my political analysis, programs, that he should have given himself time. He should have worked closely with the president, to deliver on their election promises, rather than engaging in early campaign. He really started a little bit early. So this makes our elections a mockery. And of course, as you said earlier on, of course, you said if you are the president, you would advise the president not to host elections. But of course, I also would love the president, to ensure that if the elections are held, they are held in a proper manner, with everybody observing the rules. Everybody should observe the rules. When everybody is observing the electoral rules, then election is managed properly. Then the chances of chaos emanating from elections are very, very minimal. But when everyone is a boss in himself, everyone is doing things the way they want. Look at the way our political parties have been disoriented, where you have someone from these political parties is openly campaigning for another political party, and thanks to I want to congratulate the Senate, Parliament for passing the political parties bill, which will now try to streamline how political parties manage themselves, how coalitions are managed, so that we avoid this issue. When you are elected in one party, you don't have even political party discipline. You start campaigning against your president, who is busy working, delivering on the big four. He's busy working, but the people that he was elected with are busy campaigning. So those are the things that can make me annoyed and say, fine, if this is the case, then I may not actually, hold those elections. But of course, as you know, this is a very emotive issue. I know President Kenyatta is a very, very good person. Actually, Kenyatta is one of those presidents that have, if he goes, we'll really miss him, because he does not interfere with you. He talk and he lets you talk. He's someone who is very friendly, and this has made many people take advantage. And, you can see even within the Jubilee, some people are running over, some people, the MPs who are members of the Jubilee company, they went to form their party, and they're calling themselves members of another party. Yet these people were elected, within the Jubilee party. So that discipline, if it is not there, on both sides, within the opposition, within government, if there is no discipline, then there is chaos. So this is one of the reasons why we have chaotic elections. So if it were me, and this is one of the reasons in one of my papers, that was published in the Standard, that I'll share with you, I gave, I actually suggested that instead of having elections every 5 years, why can't we change our laws so that we have elections at least once in 7 years, so that you give, someone who has been elected time, to be able to conduct his business, and I also suggested that instead of having, presidents go for 2 terms, we can have 1 term of 7 years, so that once the president has been elected, he will serve for those 7 years without worrying about the next election. In this case, then he doesn't need, and these people do not necessarily have to look for money, through corruption that will enable him and his people, run the next election. So this has been a big problem. So the frequency of elections is a disruption that we can do without. We can do without this disruption, because as you know, and David, removing an incumbent who is sitting on power and who is managing security, who is managing everything, is in charge of even the electoral body, and yet you want him to volunteer away power. You want him to just close his eyes, and this is not possible in Africa, So it is not possible. Maybe in a few countries like Ghana, where you see, incumbents basically just giving away power. But I said it is kind of wishful thinking to manage that you will tell a sitting president, to go for another election and let him just lose like that. So it is not possible. It's very difficult. Even you give it, and I used to give this example during when Raila wanted, tried to remove Kibaki. I said, even if it is him who is seated there, he will try not to lose the elections. He will try to win. He will try to take advantage of that. So I suggested that let us have elections maybe once in 7 years, so that once you elect someone, you give him time. Even if it's 10 years, we can do it even 10 years, so that you are there for 10 years, you finish your 10 years and you go, the next person comes. And so this way, people do not have to die every now and then because of the disruption that comes with frequent elections. So I agree with you, and I posit that frequent elections are doing a disservice, because for the people, they just vote. What the people want at the end of the day is service delivery. They want services. They wanted to build roads. They wanted to provide human development, education, and all that. They are not interested in frequent elections, frequent change of powers. They would love stability that, that of course will, give rise to economic development. So the focus here, one of the things that also I liked in President Kenyatta's speeches, we talk about we need to depoliticize our systems, depoliticize, and focus on the economy. So if we focus too much on the politics, then Africa lags behind. So if we can, focus more on the economy, how do we grow our economy? How can we grow, from a developing economy to a developed economy? Then it is better than too much politicking every time, which is not serving our interest. It's not serving our interest. It's only causing us pain. And at the end of the day, it's only a few people, who benefit. A few people and their friends who benefit, but the people suffer. And again, lastly, to mention is that these elections, like you said, they are very expensive. We spend billions of shillings. Look at the money Chebukati asks for every now and then. He asks for a lot of money just to manage elections. Some of this money can be saved, to do certain things if we reduce the frequency of our elections. So for me, I don't advocate for doing away with elections per se, but I advocate for the reduction of the frequency of our elections if we must do those elections. But again, we must also maybe rethink that probably we do not need to elect every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every, even maybe MCAs, or maybe we can say some other representation, can be appointed, rather than subjecting them to elections. Maybe we can elect MCAs and then maybe appoint senators, or maybe we can go through the South African parliamentary model where, we just elect parties, and then the parties are the ones that will decide who goes there. For example, they give you the seats, allocate the seats, and that way, I think it would serve better. So we may still need to rethink our models of elections, our governance systems, and that's why I disagree with those who say that our constitution is cast in stone, that it cannot be changed. No, we must be able to rethink our governance system. And that is one of the reasons why I was one of the people who supported the Building Bridges initiative, so that we can be able to rethink some of these amendments and see whether we can make the changes that are necessary. And lastly, I also suggested in my paper that we may also think about rotational system of governance, whereby the presidency can rotate. For example, in Kenya, and the quote from President Kenyatta, he said that the Kikuyus have been president since independence. After President Kenyatta left, You know, he handed over to Moi, who ruled for 24 years. And then after Moi, Kibaki came for another 10 years. After Kibaki, President Uhuru came. So he himself has said, no, this is not working. So it is not possible for another Kikuyu and another Kalenjin to be president. But you see, Ruto is insisting that he wants to be president now. Why not take the cue from the president and also let other tribes feel like they also know, you know, are a part of this nation? So that is one of the things that I advocated for: rotational, one-term presidency, so that we make every Kenyan feel like they are a part of the Kenyan family. Yeah, so that is my sentiment, and I thank you once again for giving me the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Juma. And of course, you've raised very, very strong points there in matters on how parties or maybe governments or maybe the people themselves can come up with leadership structures that will provide a better quality democracy. Because in your submission, you said it is not necessarily that we do away with democracy, but we can improve it in a way that it will be able to cater for the interest of the majority. And one thing that you mentioned is that we should have an extension of a presidential time rather than having 2 5-year presidential term. We do have 7-year terms so that we do not have interruption in between. Also, the issue of representation, you've mentioned about having the political parties like we do have in South Africa. And also maybe to our viewers who do not know, that is the system that is used by the communist China, where the party actually selects individuals who are qualified academically and out of meritocracy to come on board and serve as ministers, as MPs, and in all those cadres. So to Dr. Matsanga David, would you maybe sit on the same pew as Dr. Daniel Juma, that we do not need frequent elections? Rather, what we need is to have a longer presidential term so that in between we do not have the interruptions that the electioneering period brings about. For example, here in Kenya right now, it seems that business is actually stopping simply because we are having election. Number two, Dr. Daniel Juma has brought in the issue of perhaps elections brewing up some kind of enmity between those who are contesting. And we've already seen that here in Kenya, the deputy president and those who support him are already pointing fingers those people who are around the president, and they're saying, if we take power, then we're gonna revenge all the bad things that you've done unto us. Could that be the reason why mostly the sitting presidents in Africa do not want to relinquish power and occasion a peaceful and a seamless transfer of power to the other side of the political divide?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel Juma, for the engagement and for bringing out issues. I fully agree with you that wasting 62 billion shillings every 5 years is the most stupid thing that Africa should have. Do it 7 years, you go home. If you want, if you are bad off with elections. But if you are not bad off with elections, if you ask an ordinary Nigerian, what does the election of Nigeria benefit them? Nigeria had 84 million voters registered. Only 28 million turned up to vote. So what happened to the other 54 million? Where did they go? They disappeared to Atlantic Ocean or Sahara Desert. There you are. Kenya had 19 million voters. Only 11 million voted. What happened to the balance of 6 million to 7 million? Where did they go? Why would you waste money buying expensive data equipment on a project that 7 million people will not turn up? Why don't you use that 7 million to build 2 dispensaries? That money that you are buying the machines can build two dispensaries that can enhance, change the lives of the people of Kenya. Let me bring you another. I agree with Juma, because there is nowhere in the end of the books, the law, that said you should hold elections every 5 years. We just copied the Muzungu. A man came here, Huntington or Livingston, told us that every 5 years in the House of Westminster in Britain, Juma, we stand up, we go and vote. And we copied. Our first founding fathers said, oh, we need elections. Take for the example the case of my country, Uganda. Uganda has held elections for 37 years. I only took part in an election, one in 1980. I have never voted again in Uganda. And the election that I took part in was the most unpopular election. At that time, I supported the party that won the election. But when I went back to analyze the flaws, the cons, and the pros, the flaws that we actually did in order to rig that election, I have apologized on behalf of the late President Dr. Milton Obote, that we actually conned the people. It was not an election, it was a sham. Let's look at another angle. The electoral commissions of African countries. The one of Uganda even does things the way he wants, like he's controlling his wife and the children in the home. Candidates are beaten, some are not beaten. Some are allowed to campaign, some are not allowed. You call it an election. Come to Kenya here at the moment. Does Kenya really think a bad election will not cause violence? How come every international observer is pointing at the same trigger mechanisms? What is Juma and Daniel Wesonga? What are you doing? You are Kenyans. Nobody has gone to court to ask the court to postpone this election. That would be the most debatable issue up to the Supreme Court. If I were Juma, maybe you don't know how, if you want to write legal language, I'll write for you. Move to court and ask the Kenyan court. Let the judges tell you the reasons why we should hold elections on 8th or 9th of August. When the ballot papers are being printed in Greece. Greece is a bankrupt country. It's a ramshackle, stupid European country. You are printing your ballot papers there. Who brought the people who got the contract in the IEBC? Maybe Juma, you better understand this. It's a serious matter now. It is Ruto's people who brought the IEBC contract from Greece and handed over this contract to Chebukati. One Kenyan is married to the owner of the printing press in Athens. That Kenyan is well known to the government. Now he's the one who introduced the Greece pattern to Chebukati to take. That's why Chebukati ran so fast before the other commissioners are added on the commission to award a tender to the Greek man. Now, don't you think some of those things someone is going to pick up after you have wasted this hard-earned COVID money, which you have got out of COVID, where the Kenya Revenue Authority has tried as much to get money? You are throwing it to an Indian Ocean called Indian. And here you are telling me there is an election on 8th or 9th of August. Which election? Just tell me there is a preparation of the beating spree, tear gas spree, battles running, stones coming. Another factor that worries me about Kenya as I finish is two men who never agree that they have lost are on the ballot. And Juma take this serious and take it up. Raila is very difficult to convince that he lost. Ruto is the most dangerous troublemaker since 1992 in Kenyan elections. He's the one who triggers the trouble. In 2007, Ruto stood on a table and wanted to beat Chivutia when the owner, the presidential candidate, was standing like this. I was there with Sky News. We took pictures. I still have those pictures. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I hate ICC. But if I'd given ICC those pictures, Ruto would be in jail. So it is up to you. It's your country. As Paul was telling people that I'm a Gentile preaching to Jews. Philippians chapter 1 and chapter 4. Go and read that one tonight, sir. The letter of Paul to the Philippians. That's it. It explains I'm a Gentile preaching to the Jews. I've seen these conflicts elsewhere. Dr. Juma Daniel, I've warned the people, I'm a Gentile preaching to the Jews. I submit.
Thank you. Of course, let me just jump on that. I agree with you that and I said earlier on in my presentation that the indiscipline is too much. The indiscipline is too much. You have seen how people who have contravened the electoral laws with abandon, they have started campaigning early. You know, that's against electoral laws, you know. And I also agree with you, the issue of the preparedness of IEBC, the issue of procurement. I have always been saying that how ready is IEBC? As you know, the 2017 elections were nullified as a result of some of the weaknesses of the same IEBC. And the person who led that IEBC is still there. Chebukati is still there. You know, you saw there was a court case. The court cases said the same, you know, where Raila went to court, you know, and the election was nullified, and the president who said, fine, we'll go again. But the reasons why some of those things were nullified, you know, they said open the server, you know, those, nothing were held. So immediately after the handshake, of course, nobody has questioned whether IEBC is prepared, so we have never interrogated how are they buying the things that they're buying. So I agree with you. That you know, this electoral body, you know, we really need to interrogate, are they prepared to deliver free, fair, and peaceful elections? Because if they make any mistake, you know, and as you said, the two protagonists who are there fighting for this presidency, all of them have never, you know, they never like, of course, conceding defeat. You know, President Kenyatta is a gentleman, but now I'm also worried that when President Kenyatta is not there, he's someone who said when the courts rule, he said, okay, we'll go for another election. But will these two gentlemen be like President Kenyatta? Will they concede if any of them win? Are they able to, you know, to keep the peace, you know, in that time? So I personally am very worried, and that's one of the reasons why I was telling some of my colleagues today that I think one of the most important missions that I have today, and I may not even run, you know, for another seat in this year, because the risks are too much. You know, we need more people to come and tell these people to keep the peace. You know, because most of these guys are tribal warlords. You know, I've been telling Kenyans, and we looked at TV 2 weeks ago. I said, you vote for your tribal god if you want, but we will never allow you to cause chaos. So, David, we should never allow these people to cause chaos. You know, President Kenyatta should never allow, you know, any of these protagonists to cause chaos. So if they try again to cause chaos like we saw in 2007, 2008, then we will cancel, we'll nullify all those things and let them go where they want to go. So us holding these elections is incumbent on them keeping the peace. And I said peace is not negotiable, not negotiable. You know, we must have this in a peaceful environment, you know, but if anybody is not willing to keep the peace, if they do not promise to keep the peace, if they go on with the kind of language that we see, you know, on both sides, you know, then President Kenyatta should actually nullify, you know, cancel those elections and until we are ready, you know, to hold, you know, peaceful and free and fair elections. So I submit.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Juma. And of course, that is the problem that is actually ailing Africa. And Kenya right now is a very, very classical example of the kind of violence and the kind of tension that comes along with the elections. Maybe I'll just go to Dr. Matsanga, David, and this will be in regards to the African Union. Why hasn't the African Union leadership maybe sat down and maybe talked about this issue of elections? Because every country that has gone into mayhem in Africa, it was actually precipitated by a very flawed electoral mismanagement, as you call them. Why hasn't AU and other regional bodies not talked about it?
Which AU? There's no AU. AU is dead. AU has been, AU on Saturday, you better watch one of the biggest shows on planet Earth, being watched by 350 million people. From 11 a.m. East African Standard Time on News Central. 7 professors and 1 doctor, we are struggling it out. Security experts, we are struggling it out. We want to find out. The question is AU. Does AU need to change the name? So that can we rebrand AU, Dr. Daniel Juma? Is there AU anymore? Is it just a building? AU has been rented by France. When France wants to do what they want to do on the African continent, they come to African Union and they finish us. So there is no AU. And since I don't need even to elaborate more, maybe Dr. Juma has something to say that there is AU. Where is AU? AU is by name. And the leaders are going there on 5th and the 6th. That they are celebrating 20 years. Which 20 years of what? If an AU passport has not been got, they promised us that they will give us AU passport. Where is it? I put in my name, filled the form, sent my photographs. Maybe they send the 5 photographs to France to kill me. There's no AU. AU was gone with Dr. Deleman, Dr. Zuma. Dr. Zuma, when was there, and Amwancha, there was AU. But now Dr. Zuma is not there, he's gone. Dr. Muhammad Faki killed AU, sold AU to the French. I submit, there's no AU. So don't tell me there's a problem to be solved by a body that does not exist.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masanga David. Maybe Dr. Daniel Juma, do you have anything to add on top of that?
Yes, I also agree that AU has been has been missing out, has been missing in action. It has been MIA for a long time. And I agree that during Dr. Zuma, you know, when AU was quite active, but nowadays I don't hear about it. I don't hear about it anymore. And I just don't know. I have actually, I haven't had any, not even a meeting. I've not even had when they last had the meeting. And you see, the idea of multilateralism, you know, it actually makes a mockery of multilateralism, because the AU, you know, was supposed to actually encourage Africans to, you know, to act as one, to think as a bloc. And you know, when Gaddafi was alive, he had this vision of United States of Africa. The potential we have as an African people, if we can think as one, try to bring, even to negotiate. It's easier to negotiate with other powers, you know, if we present ourselves as one. But you look at Africa, AU has never been able to encourage intra-country travel. For example, if I want to go to South Africa, I still need a visa. Sometimes I need, you know, it takes me maybe more than 5 days to get a visa to South Africa. This is nonsense. Why would I need a visa to go to another African country, another poor African country? While I can go to, you know, the countries in Europe that I can go to. Now I have like 10-year Canadian visa, but I need a visa to go to another African. That's a mockery of our, what we're calling Ubuntu, or the African dignity. So Africans, if we cannot respect ourselves, then we don't expect the other continents to respect us. So one of the things, and this is one of the things that President Kenyatta, in his inauguration, and I was there in Kasarani, when he said that he wants to Africans, you know, actually African countries who come to Kenya will no longer be, you know, need a visa to come to Kenya. So President Kenyatta has been trying to get this African, you know, to think as one, you know, to try and encourage in Africa travel, you know, but other countries have never seen the need for that. And that is one of the biggest failures of the African Union. The African Union, one of the things it should have done by now is to ensure that there is no discrimination amongst ourselves, you know. And one of the blots that we saw, of course, in South Africa, you know, was when Africans were killing themselves. South Africans were killing Zimbabweans who are living in what was famously called xenophobia. Why would we allow Africans to kill other Africans, you know, who are just gone there to help, to work, or even to do business? So the failures of AU are immense, and I think I can't wait for the day Faki will resign, you know, will leave that, you know, so that somebody else, probably from this other side, will take over and rebrand that AU, you know, so that it can actually work for us. Otherwise, as Dr. Matsanga said, it's a dead body, because it's not able to do the things, even in its own name, because it says the African Union is union, means we are one, but there's no union. There's no union. Yeah, you know, we are divided as Africans. Yeah.
Yes, all right. That is Dr. Daniel Juma, and of course the show is facing the political fire, a show where we get to discuss about the most topical issues are facing the continent of Africa, and also we give you an opportunity to discuss with us your views and what ideas you think that could make Africa better. You can go to our Facebook page at Punchline Africa TV and be able to leave your comment down there. We shall be getting your feedback and reading them out to the rest of the viewers. Now, Dr. Matsanga, as we head towards the tail end of the show, perhaps perhaps I'll start with Dr. Daniel Juma before I hand over the mantle back to you. Dr. Daniel Juma, we have been able to do a very, very proper diagnosis of this particular problem that we have in terms of elections in Africa. You've been able to give a better prescription on what Africa needs in terms of better governance, in terms of structure, and in terms of what needs to be done to be able to move away from this perennial problem of chaotic elections and electoral cycles. So what will be your parting shot? What will be your final message to the African people, to the stakeholders who are mandated with ensuring that these elections are conducted in Africa? And what will be your parting shot also to the people of Kenya, owing to the fact that we are also going to the election in less than 7 months?
Thank you.
First of all, I was thinking very seriously. Oh, is it? Sorry, doctor.
Yes, so I think it is me and then you go. So, as you know, something is going on right now as we prepare for the next elections, where the IBC has been trying to register people, for the upcoming elections. And this is one of the things that I've been saying, that it makes a mockery that we have people that have identity cards, and these identity cards, I think we again, IBC is spending billions of our shillings to register people for elections. If it were me, and given that we're in the digital era, I would just pass laws in Parliament to ensure that that you are able to utilize your identity card for the sake of elections. So why don't we convert that register of persons, because you need the identity card to vote. Why do we need another register, in order to vote? So if it were me, if I was in leadership position today, and I would call upon the president, the leaders today, that it's a waste of money. It's a waste of money. It was a waste of my money, taxpayers' money. Taking us through another exercise of voter registration, while you can simply convert that voter, that register of person, and ensure that everybody who has an ID can just appear with his ID and be able to vote. Government has that register. Same government also has a register. Whenever you die, you are issued with a death certificate. So government knows how many people have died. So it's simply saying that you see how many people have ID and how many people have died. Minus the numbers, and then you will have, if the population of Kenya is 50 million, then we say, fine, out of the 50 million, maybe 5 million have let's say maybe 30 million maybe have IDs, and maybe 5 million have died. So 25 million can vote. So just tell people, appear with your ID and vote. So the process of taking people through another exercise of registering voters is a waste of money. It's a waste of money. And we saw the Estonian president was here, where Estonia has been able to utilize, what they're calling, electronic voting. You are issued with one ID. That ID, you can use it for multiple purposes. But as you can see, because again, this country is very litigious, the president came up with the idea of Huduma number, where he wanted to make sure if you have that Huduma number, you can access several services at a go. But the same civil society, they went to court to oppose the Huduma number. So we got the Huduma number, a lot of billions were wasted, and now that card is worthless because Parliament did not come up with a bill, an act to ensure that now we can use that Huduma number. So now if you go anywhere with the Huduma number and try to use it, you'll be told it's not working. You have to go back to your ID. So for me, I think So these are some of the things we need to do so that we are able to sanitize our governance systems. So if we allow this, if we allow anyone with an ID to vote, then we enfranchise everyone. But as it is today, we are disenfranchising so many people because we want them to go and line up to register, and yet they have the ID, which they will use anyway to vote. So this is my parting shot, and I'm hoping that future governments, if this particular one, if future governments can actually come up with laws that enable as many people to be able to take part in the system if they want. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Juma, as well, for your very, very robust contribution. And of course, his proposition there is that we need to have as many people being represented in terms of voting, and also cut off the wastage that comes in with double registration. And earlier on, he had talked about the issue of having an extended term limit in terms of presidential and other positions, so that we do not have these inconvenience and interference that comes in with the short electoral cycles. Also, he gave the idea of having parties rather than individuals selecting people who represent the citizens in their houses of leadership and also other positions of leadership. I'll just shift gears and take it to the guest, the chief guest of this particular conversation. Remember, this is Facing the Political Fire, show that comes to you every other week in terms of discussing African topical issues. And I'll go back to Dr. Matsanga David, and with a question of the day, are the elections a trigger to instability in Africa? Take it away for us, Dr. Matsanga.
The answer is yes. From the analysis that Dr. Juma and myself have put forward, from the summary that we have put forward, from the evidence, comparative analysis of areas of elections of different countries, the answer is yes. The answer is yes, because every 5 years in Africa, in every African country, there is chaos. Chaos that comes from a badly managed election, a badly managed, prepared, logistically equipped election. Is Africa prepared for that? The answer is no. How long do we then keep on having badly managed elections? Even in areas where we know the elections are bad, we still want to conduct elections. Daniel talked about voter apathy. Of course, the voters have a right. If I'm going to vote, register to vote into something where I'm going to have to lose my eye, should I come? Should I go and register in a club where people are going to beat you and you lose your tires of your car? Should I? Should I go and register in a place where they tell you are Madoadoa? Should I? Should I go and register in a place where money of wheelbarrows, money collected from the same citizens, is being passed around to buy hooligans to come and beat you? Should I? Therefore, the elections in Africa, from across the continent, apart from South Africa, the rest of the countries, they end up in tears. Apart from South Africa and perhaps Ghana, which has come closer to cleaning its elections, and the people agreeing, the rest of Africa still has a long way, including Kenya. You have a long way to go in having a free, fair, transparent, credible elections. I submit, therefore, that elections in Africa are a trigger to instability of this continent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga David. And of course, this has been the show Facing the Political Fire. And joining us has been Dr. Daniel Juma and Dr. Matsanga David. We have been looking at the contentious issue of elections in Africa, and is it a trigger to instability in Africa? And of course, from the views and the perspectives that has been given by the various guests of the show, is that Africa need to reconsider its path when it comes to elections and be able to have a system that will actually be able to fulfill the views and the needs of the majority of the African people, a system that will be able to serve Africans and not the other way around. And of course, we've looked also on the topical issues of the chaos and the bone of contention that comes up along with the elections. Continue giving us your views on our official Facebook page, that is Punchline Africa TV. We're gonna be going through them, and we are gonna be getting your feedback to the rest of our viewers in our subsequent shows. Thank you for tuning in this particular evening. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending from where you are watching us from. We'll see you tomorrow in our subsequent shows from 9 a.m. Kenyan time and East African time. And thanks once again for tuning in for this particular segment of Facing the Political Fire this afternoon. My name is Daniel Wesonga, coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya.